What up, geeks? Welcome back to our channel. My name's Mick Fraser and I'm having a little look at the Fallout 76 beta. Now, like a lot of people, I've had my reservations about this pretty much since it was announced. It's not an MMORPG, right? Not quite. It's more akin to something like Ark. But the announcement that it was going to be online, it was going to be multiplayer, I wasn't that excited about that. Partly because the first thing I thought of was, well, it's just going to be a Fallout version of the Elder Scrolls Online, which I'm not a huge fan of. And partly because Fallout for me is kind of a very solitary experience. Like, I know you've always got your AI companions with you and things, and I know there's a lot of NPCs in the game, and there's quest givers, and there's towns and villages and all this sort of stuff, but for me it's always been quite a solitary thing, Fallout. Like, you are, it's kind of like the way Skyrim is too. You are the chosen one, you're the important player in this world, and that kind of is what sells these games to me. Like, the idea that you are the one who everyone is looking to. You're the one who's going to save the day, or you're the one whose actions are going to damn the world, or you know, save humanity, that kind of thing. And that's always been a very individualist concept to me. Like, you're a person who must do everything they can, or everything they have to do to survive and to succeed. And I've always really liked the fact that you're alone. I've always really liked the fact that you're the one who's going out and experiencing this world the way that is unique to you. Like, because it's a very unique. It's because it's very emergent. So every playthrough for every person is kind of unique. Like, you won't all find the same things. You won't all go to the same places. You'll miss some quests that your friend has completed, and vice versa, and things like that. So I've always liked the fact that you're the important part, that you're the integral cog in the Fallout games. So this is a bit different because you're immediately thrown in with other players. Like, whereas the previous games, you sort of start off in the vault and you'll run around for a little bit and you'll probably meet some NPCs, you'll see some things that will affect the game later, and then you set off on the quest to do whatever. Like Fallout 3, you're after your Liam Neeson dad, and in New Vegas you're chasing down Matthew Perry because he'd shot you in the head, and Fallout 4 you were looking for your child, and you always had these very quite important and personal quests to go on pretty much from the get-go, whereas Fallout 76 doesn't have that. Like, you do begin in the vault, but it's very, very small, unless in the main game there's more, but in the beta it's a very, very small amount of time you spend in the vault. You create your character, which is ridiculously comprehensive. It's absolutely fantastic, the character creator. I imagine I will spend hours on it in the main game. But you create a character and then you're off and you sort of wander around the vault, and immediately, like, the first person I saw was some Egypt who just kept sort of punching me in the back of the head ineffectually, because you can't do damage to other players until level 5. But immediately I was like, that's kind of the immersion gone straight away. All of a sudden I'm not being thrust into this incredible world, into the middle of this incredible story that I'm going to decide the end of. I'm just another headless chicken running around the place in my pants wearing a party hat. I mean, there's nothing fucks the immersion more than seeing a bunch of other players running around in that ice skatey way that characters move in the Fallout games, in pants with party hats on. It's frustrating, actually, I think is the word I would use. So anyway, you're thrust into the world. So you leave the vault and you go to explore, and immediately you're set upon by these little powder blue robots that are zapping at you for no reason. You've got no weapons unless you've been lucky enough to scavenge one beforehand, and you're kind of just thrown into it, and it's a little bit, it's good. I mean, I like the way that Fallout always does that anyway, where you kind of get that really bright light, I've just been born kind of sensation of leaving the vault. You don't get that in Fallout 76. Instead, you're just sort of, it's very unceremonious, and you've kind of just come off the back of this quite moving monologue by the overseer of Vault 76, who's telling you that it's your duty to go out and rebuild America and save the human race and all these wonderful things that make it sound really important. And then the minute you leave the vault. You're just this guy or gal on a hillside, surrounded by other guys and gals on a hillside. And there's no sense of family, there's no sense of camaraderie like there kind of should be. I mean, the backstory is that you've been raised in Vault 76, you've been preparing for this for 25 years. You see images in the opening cinematic of vault dwellers who are very close with one another. You've just woken up in the morning after a party, which must have been the party to celebrate the fact that they're opening the vault doors that day. And yet there's no sense of camaraderie. There's no sense of these are the people I've grown up with, because you're all just random players thrown into the world. So it's already very almost self-contradictory, to the point where the immersion is just consistently, or should I not say consistently, the immersion is continuously just blown out of the water by things in this game, and it's very infuriating. Almost immediately when you do finally get hold of a gun or a weapon, you will realise very, very fast that without the VAT system, without being able to hit the left bumper and freeze time and aim at body parts and have that wonderful cinematic shot system, the combat in Fallout is shit. It's imprecise, it's floaty, it's not very satisfying, there's very little impact to what you're doing. And yeah, without VATs, because you can't have VATs because you can't be pausing the game while other people are playing. So they've taken the VAT system out, and it's just left you with a shooter that's not a very good shooter. So luckily that's not all there is to it, because I do sound really negative, and I don't mean to be really negative. There is a lot more to Fallout 76 than just shooting things. Once you're out in the world, it's a little bit different to the other Fallout games, in that it's very much the onus is on scavenging. It's on looking for supplies and looking for things with which to make weapons and armour and gear. So it's like I said, it's quite like Ark in that respect. You've got your Pip-Boy, you've got your, you can monitor your radiation poisoning, all that stuff. You've got to keep an eye on your hunger and your thirst and how tired you are, which is all cool. And it doesn't do it in it's not a very intrusive system, which is nice, because usually you find with games where there's a hunger meter, your character will starve to death inside 24 hours, which always drives me up the wall. And Fallout 76 does tend to be a little bit more lenient than that. Like I was playing for a good solid day-night cycle before I noticed that I started to really need a drink. So that was pretty good, and there did seem to be quite an abundance of water, and you learn fairly early on how to get dirty water and purify it so that you've always got something to drink. It teaches you really quickly how to make food. Obviously there's a lot of recipes, so there's a lot of things to learn. You've got a log of the recipes, so you haven't got to try and remember everything or write everything down. But then you kind of just make everything that you need yourself. There's an opportunity to trade. You can trade with, there's a robot that you can trade things with, but that robot doesn't sell an awful lot of stuff. And I found that things like ammunition were quite scarce, which is kind of good because it does force you to conserve the ammo that you've got, which again adds to the whole survival sort of dynamic. So the first thing you have to do, the first thing the game tells you to do, at least in the beta, is find the Overseer. So she's gone missing, you don't know where she is, you've got a rough idea of where her camp is, so that's what you head to. And it's when you find the Overseer's camp that you start to realise just how much crafting there is in Fallout 76. Obviously she's not there. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think I read somewhere that there are no NPCs in this game beyond the robots, which is, it's going to make it really lonely for people who don't want to play with other players. But I didn't see any NPCs at all. So the Overseer's not there. Whether she turns up later or she's just a wild goose chase to keep you moving, I don't know. But she wasn't there. So you reach her camp, she's not around, you get the next objective marker, you move on. This takes you to the Responders base. Now the Responders are kind of Fallout 76's version of the Regulators, in that you wear a paramedic's outfit and you respond to problems, you respond to trouble, you go and you engage in public events and you try and protect settlements and stuff like that. So it's very much like, it sets up that whole Fallout vibe. where you're not just a person wandering around. You can just wander around if you want and get into trouble and adventures, but you do have a purpose. You are out in the world with a purpose. You can help people, you can save people, you can rob people, you can do all those wonderful things that Fallout has always allowed you to do. I will say that aesthetically, it's very, very much a Fallout game. Like, there's no mistake in it. You know you're playing a Fallout game. The UI is what you've come to expect. The Pip-Boy is what you've come to expect. The way the world looks, the way characters look and move. So there's no doubt in your mind that you're playing a Fallout game, and that in itself does the game a lot of favours, because you do tend to forgive Fallout. I think naturally we tend to forgive Fallout for quite a few ills. Like, there's some things that Fallout does, like the aforementioned sort of floaty character movement and poor shooting, that you would probably strip another game down for, whereas Fallout, you kind of just go, well, it's just Fallout, that's what Fallout is. So I think Bethesda do get a little bit of a free pass in that respect. You know, it's a very, very popular franchise, and it's never really been a franchise that is there to fleece people. You know, it's never been heavy on the microtransactions and things like that. They've always been very big games. They've always been very varied. There's always been a lot to do. They've got some great humour in them. So, you know, we don't mind too much if there's a few issues where some of the mechanics are concerned. But at the same time, Fallout 76 does kind of lose some of those things, and it loses them because you've got these other players. Now, this is it for me. The biggest problem with this game is going to be the other players, and I know that sounds really silly in a game that is essentially, you know, a massive multiplayer online game, a shared world game, to say that the problem's going to be that, you know, the players. But it's true, because it really fucks the immersion up, and it really kind of just, I mean, people want to, you know, they want to mess around, they want to give themselves silly character names, they want to, you know, and because it doesn't show you the character name actually above the player's head, it shows you their gamer tag, and I mean, some gamer tags are just so stupid and silly, and I know that sounds like I'm being an uptight prude right now, but I'm not. I'm just saying that in a game it's the same issue that you get with Destiny, you know, when you're supposed to be on this grand quest to save the galaxy, and you're with, you know, XXY arseface XXY, and it kind of it has always bugged me a little bit, and it does so again in Fallout 76. And there's always this thing where people will want to troll you, you know, people want to screw with you just for funsies. And I mean, okay, you know, it's allowed in the game, so you could do it to them as well, so it's kind of an even playing field, but that doesn't make it okay. You know, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to have my experience ruined by some jackass who wants to gate crash a mission I'm on in his pants. You know, piss off, mate. Play your own game. Let me enjoy my game. I paid for this too, and that's going to happen. I can feel it. I can sense that that's what's going to happen, because there is this opportunity to you know, randomly murder and fuck people's games up, and that for me is not good. I don't want that in Fallout. I don't want that, because the whole thing in Fallout is that, yeah, you've got bad people, you've got bad characters, you've got criminals, you've got, you know, factions that aren't necessarily, you know, doing humanity any favours. But the thing about the Fallout universe is that everybody seems to think they're the good guys. Like, that's the sense that you get from every character in the game that you meet. They believe they're the good guys. Even if they know they're bad guys, they believe that what they're doing is the right thing for humanity. Like, that's kind of how the stories always sell to me. And then no matter who you choose to sort of plant your flag with, you're working towards a goal. Well, that doesn't work when it's a bunch of random players, because nobody's got a clear agenda on anything. Everyone just wants to prat around, and it's going to be very frustrating, I think, because you lose in that element of humanity banding together against adversity, and what you're replacing it with is a bunch of roving gangs of players wandering around doing basically whatever the hell they want. I didn't see too much of it in the beta, so I could be exaggerating or I could be worrying unduly, but I really believe that's going to be the problem. And if you're going to go into this game every time with a group of friends, a group of people, and you've got a clear path or something you want to do, or even if you do want to just go in and prat around, you're probably going to have a good time. But if you go in on your own and you think, I'm going to try and make some progress, and you just end up getting ganked all the time, it's just going to piss you off. I'll give you one example of something that I can't quite work out whether it's broken or I misunderstood what I was doing or I'd missed something in the game. But I went to an event. Right now you can open the map and you see events on the map and you can choose to fast travel to them. It costs you caps for some reason to fast travel to an event. I don't know why. I imagine that microtransactions are going to come into this like they have in Tesso, and it's going to cost you, real world money. You will be able to buy caps, so they make you spend caps on pretty much everything. I did notice that some of the economy when I was trading was just absolutely piss poor. The cost of things compared to how many caps I'd managed to scavenge so far was a joke. But that aside, I fast travelled to this event, and it's basically like a public event like you'd get in Destiny or something like that, where you fast travel there and there's some other players and they're engaged in an event to defend a farm from an onslaught of robots. I jumped in with them, I teamed up and we vanquished the robots. We got a reward of a bunch of crafting supplies, which was cool, so I was able to make some armour, all well and good. I wandered around inside a little bit, saw an icon on the map that looked like a workbench in a circle. Wandered over to it, and it was indeed a workbench. As soon as I got close to it, a dome appeared over my character. I began to claim the workbench. It soon told me that I had claimed this outpost, and that meant that I could open up crafting opportunities and I could build a settlement. Suddenly I had the ability to fabricate walls and floors and ceilings and doors and all that sort of cool stuff like you could do in Fallout 4. And I was able to go outside and start to build. But I was halfway through sort of laying the first wall, and all of a sudden I couldn't do it anymore because my claim was being contested. So I went back in, and some other player had literally just wandered in to the workbench, and it had begun to contest. So I walked into the dome, and then all of a sudden, regardless of level, we were able to fight. Well, this other player got the better of me and killed me. I was able to seek revenge, which basically puts a marker on them of the person who last killed you, so you're able to track them down and exact your vengeance. But I went there, and this person was halfway done claiming what I had just claimed, so I jumped back in and killed her, and I claimed it again. And I thought, well, this is, if there's no way to lock this down, if there's no way to claim something and have it be yours for a length of time, I mean, I don't know, maybe you have to build something for it to lock in, maybe you have to establish something else for it to lock in. I genuinely don't know. But if that's all it is, if all you have to do to contest the claim on an area is wander up to it and wait, it's going to be very, very frustrating. I mean, imagine that you can do that if every settlement like that is just basically a big game of King of the Hill, where whoever is stood in the dome for long enough can claim it and then go and build, and somebody else can contest it by just wandering in. I mean, I don't know. I hope to God I missed something, or it was broken, or it was the beta, or it's not a finished concept. But if that was a finished concept, then it needs some serious work. That's going to be very, very infuriating. Another thing I will talk about, though, is the crafting itself. Now, I was very impressed. Actually, the crafting is huge. The crafting element is huge. There's loads to build. You can break everything down. So instead of just picking, I know you could before, but you go to a crafting station now and you can break anything down that you've picked up, including food, ingredients, anything can be broken down into components. And those components are then used to create other things. You can create, obviously, weapons and guns, explosives and throwing knives and clothes and armour and other tools. You've got a crafting station which is just for potions and chemistry. You've got the cooking stations so you can make food and water to keep you alive. It's incredibly comprehensive, the crafting system in Fallout 76, which is why I say it's more like sort of Ark or something like that than it is like an MMORPG. It's, in fact, the RPG side of things is kind of dumbed down a little bit in favour of the survival stuff, so it feels less it's less character driven. It's less about the choices you make as a character and more about the choices you make as a survivalist. So it's more about, you know, is it safe to rest here or am I going to get attacked? Is it safe to build a fort here? Is it going to be burned down by another player? You know, is it safe to work with this other player? Are they going to betray me? So I guess in that respect, it's got quite a cool dynamic. You know, it's very Mad Maxy in a way. You don't know who you can trust. Everybody's kind of in it on their own. I mean, like I said, you can team up with people, but at the end of the day, you are mostly going to be on your own. And it's going to be a case of who do you trust? Where is safe? And I think people are going to be looking for safe spaces in this game quite a lot, because I do notice that it is incredibly combat heavy. Like I said, normally in a Fallout game, like particularly the last Fallout game, yeah, there was combat at the beginning. Yeah, it does introduce you to combat early on. You are out in the world and you can wander into high-level areas or threats that you're not ready for. But it's more about exploration. It's more about the choices that you make and the people that you meet and the quests that you're given and you know, looking for those secrets and those little Easter eggs that Bethesda are so good at hiding in their games. Whereas this is very much a combat-oriented game. Like you're thrown into the mix straight away. Like I said, the minute you leave the vault, there's robots trying to kill you. You move on down the path, there's more robots. By the time I'd played a couple of hours of the beta, I'd already met radioactive opossums, ticks, mole rats, bloat flies. I'd met several varieties of robot trying to kill me. And of course there's the other players as well. So it's very much a game about fighting, more so than any other Fallout game before, I think. Looking for places to be, for places to kind of hide sometimes, just so you can rest up and recuperate. A safe place where you can put your camp that somebody else is not going to be able to invade, or it's not going to be overrun by, you know, radioactive bears and death claws. I think is going to be quite difficult. So that could create a very cool sense of survivalism, probably even more so than a game like Ark. And I'm hoping that's the case. I do hope that they push the survival angle more, because I think it's got to have that. Otherwise, it's going to be a game. It's going to be a game that doesn't really know what it wants to be and doesn't really have a clear sense of its own identity. I'd rather it pushed one way or t'other. You know, I want it to be this or this. I don't want it to be a game that's trying to be all things to all people. I think if Bethesda have, and we don't know, I don't know yet, certainly, because I've not played enough, but if Bethesda have really set out and said, this is not a Fallout sequel, well, it's a prequel anyway, but this is not, you know, the next game in the Fallout franchise as we know it. This is Fallout by way of survival sim, and that's what they've really pushed for, which I kind of get the feeling that they have. Then I'm kind of on board with that. I don't want a game that's trying to juggle everything and keep all the people happy all the time. I do notice that the map is huge, right? There's a lot to see in this game. There's going to be a lot to find. There's going to be a lot of places to explore. I know, you know, this is 2018, there's going to be DLC, there's going to be expansions, there's going to be things added to this game, added to this world, there's going to be new enemies and quests and gear and all that sort of stuff. I know that's coming. I know there's going to be a storefront where you're going to be able to buy cosmetics or boosts or whatever. So I know all that's going to come. So already, just even glancing at the map, you can see this is going to be a huge, huge undertaking. And that kind of shows in the fact that it's very buggy. I mean, the Fallout games have always been a bit glitchy. Fallout 76 is the worst I think I've seen. But then again, we're playing a beta, so it has got a few more weeks there. There is ongoing work being done to improve these things, so it's not fair to judge it based on what I've seen so far. But it is. The beta itself does appear to be quite buggy. There's some slowdown, there's some weird physics stuff going on, like there always has been in Fallout games. But I'm hoping that that's fixed. I'm hoping that when the full game comes out, some of that's fixed, at least to a point where it's not quite as noticeable and it's not quite as able to, you know, play around with the immersion. I think time is going to tell on this one. I expect that these days a lot of games like this are released as a kind of game as a service, and so things aren't finished at release, and that's kind of become tragically the norm. So I think, you know, 12 months down the line we're going to be playing a completely different game than we are when Fallout 76 launches in November. Because there is potential here. Like, even just playing the beta, there's a great deal of potential. So I know that Bethesda are going to build on that. I know the game is going to shape and improve. And I think, to be honest, that at launch, it's probably going to win some fans. I don't think it's going to fail. I think the critics will be harsh on it. I think that there's a good chance it's going to struggle to please established fans, but newcomers in particular and fans of survival sims are going to lap it up, I think. So there's a good chance it's going to do quite well, and I hope it does. I hope that it does well enough that Bethesda, you know, pay attention to it and they do fix the flaws and they do attempt to fix some of the problems with the game, because those problems are real right now. They do exist, and I hope that some of the mechanics and some of the concepts they've got in place right now work. You know, I hope that it's not something that is ruined by the agency of other players. Like I said, time's going to tell on this one. I think the game at launch is not going to be the game we're playing in 6 months. It's got some great potential. Like I said, the crafting is solid, the world unmistakably Fallout and unmistakably, you know, full of character, but not as much as in the past. You know, the lack of NPCs and, you know, the presence of other players, I think, are going to harm the Fallout atmosphere. But we'll see, won't we? Because it's out on November the 14th and we'll be playing it. I'll be playing it. We'll have a review up on godisageek.com and you'll be able to see what we think, and we'll have some, you know, we'll have some guides come in and a fair bit of coverage on it. So hopefully you'll come back and see what we think when it launches. In the meantime, I've been Mick Fraser for God is a Geek, and you guys have been lovely. Bye.